Hi everyone, welcome back. This is part 2 of your introduction to performing literature. We're going to focus here on the fundamentals of what's going to be expected of you in this course.
So, what you're going to do for this course, you are going to select a text, and I'm going to give you guidelines for each unit of what kind of texts you're allowed to select, but I don't have a course book that you're going to choose from. I want you to choose texts for each unit that you find meaningful. You're going to analyze the text for how it should translate to being embodied in front of a camera for your peers and for me, and even for extended audience. You will present a performed version of this text, and then you'll present a defense, which is going to list some of the performance choices you made, as well as what this particular piece of literature teaches about what it means to be human, what it means to be a member of this culture. There are, of course, some real world skills, not that we're living in a pretend place, but there is this idea of being able to strategically make decisions. How will this particular piece of literature look on stage? What kind of choices should I make to bring it to life? Also, you'll hone public presentation. At the core of strong public presentation is having an ability to emotionally connect with the audience, for them to feel what you're feeling, to be in that space with you. I have students who have left this course. They have become interested in politics. They have become lawyers. They've become doctors and dentists. And they'll write me back years later. I've been teaching this course for almost 20 years. And they'll say, Dr. Scott, I always fall back on that idea of the emotional connection with who I'm talking to is vital to me being able to persuade them to see things my way, to change their actions, to want to follow me into a next step. So while persuasion is important in sales, it translates to all of these different careers as well. And I'm really excited for you to have this opportunity. Okay, so when we say analyze, don't think of a literary analysis. What you're going to be thinking about is the place, the cultural setting, the content, the space that you're going to be performing in, which is going to be a self-recorded video for this course, who your audience is, and what your goals are for why you're doing this performance. Know that there's all different kinds of goals, and sometimes they're going to overlap. An informative speech just wants to teach people something they didn't know about before. I've had students who are passionate about a particular region of the country, and for that region, they wanted to do a more informative performance to teach a little bit about that space. You also could have a persuasion focus to your performance, and that might mean you want to really express a point of view that you're worried people don't understand and empathize with. You might want to convince people of something. I've had a lot of my environmental studies students want to convince people of the dangers of global warming. There is this idea to convince them that it's real. And some go beyond just convincing that it's real, of wanting to actuate, wanting to move people to change who they are and what they do by the new information they now have, and sometimes to reinforce that idea of preaching to the choir. Sometimes we just want to remind people this is what we believe, this is who we are, and this is how we should move forward. So you can think about how those are going to go together in the piece you're presenting to us. So, some quick things to remember. You are not going to memorize anything for this course. You're going to perform from a script, but it's not reading, it's performing literature. Remember, readers, they look at the printed page, they just reiterate the author's voice as they see it in real time. A literary performer knows the text. You're going to keep rehearsing it. You're going to get to the point where you can look up, connect with the camera instead of being completely tied to your script because you know it so well, even if it's not memorized and you still have your script there. You're going to make interpretive choices. You're going to decide, am I going to take this character out? Am I going to express it this way? What is the voice going to be for this particular person? How are they feeling? There's a level of analysis that goes into performance of literature that doesn't go as much into reading as we just take what's on the page as is and move forward. We're now going to move on to performing literature versus acting in theaters, because there is a difference in arts and aesthetic practices between these two things. So, acting versus performing literary text. If you're an actor, you would wear a costume, you would be cast in one role, you'd be expected to memorize your lines. I've been on stage a lot, and never has there been an expectation that I would not have my lines memorized. And you perform only dramatic scripts. That means plays or movie scripts. There is this idea, one of my colleagues at the University of San Jose is someone who his job, in addition to being a professor, is he takes novels and he turns them into plays for the stage. Now, he is the playwright, and he is apart from the author of that novel. That is what we do when something is made for the stage. We have a whole new script with a whole new author. Now, let's move to oral interpretation or performing literature. While you can wear a costume if it feels fun for you, if it helps you get into character, I don't expect it, and it's not something that we usually do performing with literature. I traveled with a performing theater troupe. We performed different plays by C.S. Lewis for 2 years, and we never had costumes. We just wore solid colored clothing. So there is this idea that there isn't an idea usually of there being a costume. That doesn't mean you can't wear a costume if you would like to. I had one student who was performing from The Great Gatsby, and having on a 1920s hat helped him get into character. You can do that, but it's not expected. Also realize you'll play multiple roles if necessary. Some of you might choose a script that only has one character, but most of you will at least have a narrator and a character that's going to be going back and forth. And there is this idea that you will perform every role in the script. You'll become familiar with it rather than memorizing it. Remember, we're going to interact with the camera, but it's not expected that it's memorized. And you will perform prose and poetry not from an adapted script for the stage, but from the page of the novel or poems as it was written to be read. Okay, we're going to talk about how to select a literary text. Students often get anxious and they're like, oh my goodness, there's so much literature out there. How am I going to make a decision? So here's a list of things I want you to think about. Think about what you think of when you think of literature. What constitutes literature? You might think of the novels assigned in your English courses, the poetry assigned in those English courses. And of course, all that is literature. But remember, literature is whatever a society agrees it is, it's whatever a culture agrees it is. And in this course, anything that has been written to be consumed through reading is considered literature. So think about how universal this piece of literature is. How can other people connect with it? How does it reflect or contradict your values? And you might perform something that contradicts your values because that's what you want to focus on in the defense of what we learn about being human and why you disagree with that. It's uniqueness. Sometimes if a story is so ubiquitous that people have heard it so many times, it can put a lot of pressure of how does this become engaging if too many people have heard it already? It's significance. Why does it matter to you? Why should we hear it? Why should you take all this time to prepare this particular text? And then who you are. What do you want to perform? And what are you able to perform? One thing to think about is the delight, the desire, and the danger of performance. Within this course, there is a sort of delight that you can perform anything you want, and it doesn't have to be something that you would be cast for. It can just be something that you find meaningful and you've always wanted to try. I've had students say, oh my goodness, I would never be cast in a play or a movie as this particular iconic character, but now I've got a chance that I can play them if I would like to. I hope you find the desire, and the desire means that you can co-create meaning, identity, and understanding. You can help your audience see not only a piece of literature, but the identities and culture reflected in it in so many new ways. So I hope you enjoy this way of that emotional connection with an audience can transform how we understand things. There's also a danger, And that danger is that in our society, there are some bodies that are more powerful than other bodies. Some people have more advantages, they have stronger standing. And when we choose to perform literature that in some way is showcasing people in our society that are marginalized by race, by gender, by sexual orientation, by socioeconomic status, by size, are we being careful? Are we honoring them? Are we being respectful? And that's something to play with of how am I making sure I reinforce what I want people to understand, and I'm not reinforcing stereotypes that might hurt or marginalize a population through my performance choices. Other things to consider: interests. Don't choose something that you're not going to enjoy preparing. Ability. Can you perform this piece adequately? Of course, you can cut characters out. Often, while you're not allowed to add anything into the performances, and we'll talk more about that, you are allowed to cut characters out. But I had one student who wanted to perform a piece that had 11 characters. It was very difficult to cut any of them out. It was just too complex of a piece. Time allotment. Think about making sure you keep within the recommended time constraints. I don't take off points for going over. But if you go over, it means you're preparing so much more text. And this course moves so quickly, I recommend that you find an excerpt that you like and think about how much time do I have? And then ethics to yourself, to the audience, and the text that we talked about later, not falling into the dangers of reinforcing stereotypes, negative beliefs about marginalized groups of people. So also, you think about the complications performing a piece surrounding an issue. Think of language, images, embodiments. Think about the complications surrounding audience interpretation of the performing of you performing the text. And also remember, according to David Terry's essay, there are questions of representations that come with your body and cultural interpretations of it. So remember, your body performing something means we're reading all of your identity through your body and then your body's portrayal of another. So be careful as you create characters of how you're going to do this. It's okay to be playful. It's okay to be funny. You can move to a place of offense and to really be careful about walking that line and being aware of how your choices are going to be interpreted by an audience. Performance of literature, what performance literature is and does depends radically on where and with whom one is doing it. This is from David Terry's essay that you'll read later. So remember that within this space of this course, this is a safe space. You're going to be getting feedback from me, feedback from your peers to become empowered at that idea of how to analyze and prepare a presentation for an audience that's going to resonate. I'm excited to see where we go from here. Also, make sure that you're considering who your audience is. Remember that we're going to be required to watch each other's performances. Think of the time and space, the emotions and their attention, and also the analysis interpretation they're going to be doing of your piece as you respond. Be aware of who you're trying to reach, and then make your strategic decisions. And that's all I have. Welcome again to Performance of Literature. I'll see you real soon for the Performance of Prose lecture.